Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'll be taking a look at Rollecate by Michiel de Wit, published by Hot Games, which is a competitive card-laying game for 1 to 4 players, which plays about 15 minutes for ages 8 and up. And in this game you'll be playing cards with railroad tracks on them, and there's a little steam engine that runs across them, and you're trying not to derail that train because that will get you penalty points, and the player with the least penalty points at the end of the game wins the game. So I'll open up the box and show you what's inside, then I'll set up a game and explain the rules, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So let's take a look at the box. So the Rollecate box is a nice compact little box with some gold lettering on it. Pretty cool, and some gold details on the train as well. It's really nice, gold foil. And on the back you can see the game in play with the dice and the locomotive, and this edition has the wooden meeple locomotive, and you can now actually get a pewter white metal locomotive because this game is currently on Kickstarter. You can get the locomotive, which is a limited run, and if you don't own the game yet, you can get the game itself as well, so check that out. I'll put a link in the description. So let's have a look inside. So inside the box is of course the rulebook, in this case in 2 languages. I have the Dutch version here and the English version here, and let's take a closer look. That is just a little booklet that explains how to set up the game, the gameplay, and your actions that you can take, how to add tracks, and that is basically it. And it also has rules for solo play. So that's just about 10 pages of rules, and that's that. And then we have the dice, which are pretty cool. We have these 4 wooden dice, D6s with rounded corners that have 4 of these train engine wheels on them and 2 blank sides, which goes for all of these. So there's 4 of those in the box. Here is the wooden locomotive. And like I said, if you want a limited edition pewter cost locomotive, check out the Kickstarter, but this is also pretty nice. It's with the printed detail on it. So we have that, and then of course the cards, which have nice illustrations on them by Misa Jovanovic, and they're tracks. That's what they are. They're basically tracks, and you can put they have a value, and you can put any card next to it, except in this case, you know, the 3. So they each have a card that is not allowed. So the 2 cannot have the number 4 connected to it, the 3 can't have the 1, the 4 can't have the 2, etc. So you have all kinds of railroad track pieces, but there are also pieces that will derail the train, like this one. So that's pretty nice. There's really nice illustrations with the farm animals. Looks very colorful. Cards have a linen finish, as you can see. So yeah, pretty decent, and they have a regular thickness. They're not super thick, but they have a good thickness. I think they're okay. So we have all of these, some corners, and yeah, and some of these. There's no tracks at all. Okay, so those are the cards. Let's set up a game. To set up the game, shuffle all the cards and put them in a stack on the table where everybody can reach them, and then taking turns, all the players place a card on the table until you have an initial track of 4 cards. So for example, you just draw a card and then you put the next one either to the left or the right, and if you draw a chaos card, which is one of these, just set it aside for now. You'll shuffle it back into the deck. And then the next card, so you can place every card horizontally or vertically. In this case, we're going to place it like so, because the rails must connect. And the third player takes a new card, puts that at the end. And then the fourth player, or if you're playing 3 players, the first player again draws another card. If it's a derailment card, you also set that aside and shuffle that back. And then you can either put it like this or like this, doesn't matter. And during the initial setup, you ignore the numbers on the card, so you can place any tracks next to each other. Then you shuffle any cards that have a derailment or a chaos card into the deck, and you deal each player 2 cards which they take on their hand without showing it to the other players. Put the train token on the 3rd card of the track, and then depending on the number of players, you draw a number of cards from the deck and put them out of the game back into the box. With a 2-player game, you draw 11 cards and remove them. In a 3-player game, you remove 9 cards, and in a 4-player game, you remove 7 cards. Whoever traveled by train last gets to start, and then you're ready to play. The game is played in turns in clockwise order, and the game ends whenever the draw pile is empty and the last player who drew a card finishes their turn, and then you tally up your penalty points and the player with the lowest count wins the game. Now when it's your turn, you first draw 1 card into your hand. There is no hand limit, and then you must perform 1 of 3 actions. You can either pass, build tracks, or discard chaos cards. So if you pass, you're always allowed to pass, and sometimes it's your only option, or it may be just your best option. And when you choose to pass, you move Rollecate 1 card forward on the track, if possible. During a pass action, Rollecate never derails, and then after you have passed, you take 1 penalty card, which is always the first card of the track all the way at the back. So this would be my penalty card if I had passed. If you have to take multiple penalty cards, you do so one by one, starting from the start, and just take the cards until you have the required number. But if you reach the card that Rollecate is standing on, you stop and you don't take that card. And then you can take those penalty cards and put them on your penalty stack in any order you like. If you manage to place 2 penalty cards on top of each other with the same value, you can take both of those cards and put them back in the game box, and those are out of the game, so you reduce your number of penalty points. So it's always a good idea to try and get cards in your penalty pile that you already have, but they have to be consecutive. So you are allowed to check your penalty pile to see which cards are next and then plan accordingly if you can. But more on that in a bit. Another action you can take is to build tracks. So you take 1 or more cards with the same value from your hand and you add them to the end of the railway. And you can add cards either horizontally or vertically, as long as the next player can add another card. The rails must always align and cards can never overlap each other. You are not allowed to create a loop because that would make it impossible to continue the game. And lastly, you can never place a card on the track with a difference of 2. So in this case, this card has a value of 2. I could not place a 4 here, and that number is always depicted in the corner of the card with a cross through it. After you've added your cards, Rollecate will start to ride, and then you add up the values of all the cards you played. In this case, I only played 2, and then you roll a number of dice equal to that number. So in this case, I only have to roll 2 dice. And for every wheel that I roll, Rollecate moves 1 card ahead. So in this case, it would move here. If I had had 2 cards with a value of 2, then I would have had to roll all 4 of the dice. But even if you have to roll more, so for example, if I had placed 2 cards with a value of 3, or even 2 cards with a value of 4 perhaps, then I would have had to roll 6 or 8 dice, and you have to do that. So you simply roll again and remember the number of wheels you rolled. should you roll more wheels than Rollecate is able to move, then Rollecate derails. You simply place the locomotive on the final card of the track and you draw penalty cards equal to the number of moves that Rollecate could not advance. So if I, for example, had rolled 2 wheels here and it started here, then I had still 1 move left which it couldn't do, so I had to take 1 penalty card from the back of the track. So again, if I had placed multiple cards of a higher value and I rolled lots of dice and I had to, for example, draw 5 cards, 5 penalty cards, I would have taken these 4. I can't take this one because Rollecate is on it, and I could place those in my penalty stack in any order. So for example, I could put down the 2 cards with the value 2 first. They would cancel each other out. I would remove them. Then I could put down the 4 and then the 3, perhaps hoping that later I could put that 3 on top of it, or any other player's cards. So that's a bit of a gamble. And the third action you can choose from is to discard chaos cards. So a chaos card looks like this, and if you have one of those cards on your hand, you may choose to discard that. And they also have a value. They cannot be placed on the track, but they do have a value, and you can use those to get rid of some of your penalty cards. And unlike the pass action when you're playing a chaos card onto your penalty pile, you do not have to move the train forward nor take a penalty card. Now, whenever Rollecate passes over a broken track or stops on one, she will get damaged. When that happens, you take 1 penalty card from the back of the track to pay for repairs, and at the end of your turn, you place that card on your penalty stack. It is possible for Rollecate to pass more than 1 broken track in your turn, and if that happens, you will have to take multiple penalty cards. So let's see what happens in a quick round here. So the second player takes their turn and draws a card. And this is my penalty pile. I'll just move this to the side. So they decide to play this card here. And that card has a value of 1, so it can be played next to the card with a value of 2. They only need to roll 1 die, so they do. And Rollecate doesn't move forward, so it doesn't derail. Next up is player number 3. They also draw a card. And now they choose to play 2 cards with a value of 1. Let me just move my cards to the side here. And they're gonna play this card over here and that card over here. That's 2 cards of a value of 1, so that's a total of 2 points. Take 2 dice, roll them, and Rollecate moves 1 track ahead, and it derails, which means that that player has to pay 1 penalty card. It takes the last card from the track, puts that in their discard pile. So now it's my turn again, and I draw a card. Let's see what we have here. We have this, we have one of these chaos cards, and I have these corners. So maybe I don't have a 4, and my chaos card is also valued 2, so discarding something to my penalty pile would not be very handy right now. I could play 2 of these. Perhaps there's still plenty of track. Well, there's 2 spaces until it derails, but I think I'll try and place these 2 tracks. So that's 2 cards with a value of 1. So I'll play this one here and this one here then. So, and that is legal because I couldn't place a 3 next to this, so I didn't. And that means a total value of 2. Again, I roll 2 dice, and that's 2 spots, so that's safe for Rollecate to travel. And then it's the next player's turn again. They draw a card, so they get another 4. So they could choose to play 2 4 cards, but that would mean rolling 8 dice. So that's a bit tricky, but it's probably gonna derail anyway. So let's see. Rolling 8 dice will certainly get me at least 1 wheel, so that means that player will have to take a penalty card for the derailing and then continues, but then they only have 4 more cards, so that is tricky. On the other hand, you know, you could check which cards are here. So if they needed to take more than one card, perhaps 3, then those 2s could cancel each other out. So maybe this player will risk it. So let's see. They're going to play, yeah, they're going to play both of these 4s. So I'm going to place this one over here and this one over here. Can't play it like this because then the cards would overlap. But I can play this card like this, and I can't place a 4 next to a 1, so that's legal. And then they would have to roll 8 times, because that's 2 cards with a value of 4. So first roll is this, which is 3 spots already. And then I roll them again, and that's 2 more, so that's 5 spots. So the first one derails Rollecate, so that means I have to take this one for a penalty card. And then it's 2, 3, 4, 5. So she makes it to the end of the track without derailing further. Then the third player again draws a card. They cannot play a 2 next to the 4. So fortunately they drew a 1, so they can still play. Otherwise they might have to pass. They don't have a chaos card on their hand, so they couldn't play that either. So a chaos card with a value of 2 would have been great now. So the card that I have here in my hand would have been perfect for them. But they don't have that. So they might choose to play this card and just place that here. That's only a 1. Hopefully, well, it's always going to be either 1 or nothing, so Rollecate is safely moving forward, etc. So then it's my turn again, etc. until the entire stack runs out, and then the final player plays their turn, and then you score your points. So what you do then is you take your penalty pile and your hand, and you just add all the cards from your hand to your penalty pile. But you are not allowed to combine cards anymore. So even if you have cards in your hand with the same value that was in your penalty pile, you cannot combine those and get rid of them. They just add up. And whoever has the lowest score wins the game. In the case of a tie, the player with the least cards wins. And if there's still a tie, then the tied player with the fewest cards of value 4 will win, followed by values 3, 2, and 1 if necessary. Now, during this setup, I said that you can't play a card that makes it impossible for the next player to continue playing, but that is actually not written specifically in the rules. So for example, if I was able to put a card here, then, you know, you couldn't continue, but this is still a legal move. If this would fit, I think it does, then the next player would have to pass, and the next player, and so forth, taking penalty cards from the back until the path is clear again. So this is actually a way you can play. So to keep it more child-friendly, the house rule basically of playing in such a way that you can always add a new card is preferable, but the designer Michiel has actually told me that you can play in a way that sometimes it is necessary to take a penalty card because you can't place a new track. So that's up to you if you want to play like that or not. Now you can also play Rollecate by yourself in a solo game, and in this variant your goal is to score as few penalty points as possible, and you're basically just trying to improve your score with every play. The setup is the same, and you remove 11 cards from the draw pile and you put them in the box, and you play until the draw pile is empty. And if you want to make it more difficult for yourself, you can also rule that you are only allowed to let Rollecate derail 3 times, and the 4th time that happens, it's game over and you lose. But if you use those rules, then damaged rails will not count towards derailing. There is also another solo variant where you're playing against an AI. You set up the game just like you normally would for a 2-player game, and you play by the regular rules, but the AI player does not get dealt any cards. And whenever it's their turn, they still draw 1 card and will try to play it, but if they cannot play it, they will pass and put the card that they just drew back into the game box, removing it from the game. If the AI draws a chaos card, it is simply placed into their discard pile. and the AI never rolls dice but simply moves Rollecate the number of steps indicated on the card that they just played. And if the train derails, they always take exactly one penalty card. The AI can also combine penalty cards and remove them from the game. And the final score for the AI is determined by counting the number of cards in their discard pile and not the values. And that's how you play Rollecate. Let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Rollecate by Michiel de Wit, published by Hot Games. Well, let's start with the presentation. So the component quality is good. The cards could have been slightly thicker, but they're good enough. They're basically standard type of card with a linen finish, and they're big enough to make out all the art and the numbers on them quite clearly. I really like how bright the colors are. They really pop. The artwork is also very nice. I really love all the tracks and the little sheep and the cows and the bushes and everything that's painted on there. It's really nice. The icons are clear and everything is just very lovely and very friendly looking. I also like the dice. You have these wooden D6s with the clear faces on them, just printed on, painted on. And they are slightly engraved as well. So that's fine. Sometimes you do need to roll more than 4 dice. So you just have to use the same dice and re-roll them and remember how many of these wheels you rolled. So technically, 4 is enough, but it might have been better if there had been 6 in here, for example, because that's about the highest number I usually roll. You don't often put down 2 4s and have to roll 8 dice, but it's okay. 4 dice is fine. It could have been a little bit more, I think. Otherwise, I really like how the game's presented. It's also in a very compact box. They even threw in a couple of Ziploc bags so you can store all the cards and the dice. And, of course, the cute little train meeple in here. And if you want to have the special edition pewter miniature Rollecate engine, then check out the Kickstarter that's currently ongoing by clicking the link in the description below or the I in the corner of this video, because Michiel de Wit is currently running a Kickstarter to do a limited run of the pewter locomotive, and you can also get the game itself if you don't have it yet. The theme is nice. It's always fun to put down these railroad tracks and have this little locomotive just drive over it, and then you're picking up the rear and building on the front again. So the tracks will be traveling across your table, and that's just a lot of fun. So I think the theme is really nice and really works for this type of game as well. So the gameplay is also a lot of fun. I found it to be very simple to explain, very simple to teach. It's simple to play. You basically you have 2 cards at the start of the game, and then you draw a card, and then you simply decide if you want to play a card and roll the dice and see how far the engine is gonna travel, or to pass if you don't want to play a card, or maybe you can't play a card, but then you have to take the rear card of the track as a penalty, which sometimes can be beneficial if you already have a card in your penalty stack with the same number as the last one on the track, because if you see that, you might just want to pass on purpose, take that card, combine 2 of the same value cards in your penalty stack and just get rid of those cards. And of course, you can play these chaos cards with a number on them, which might also be helpful in getting rid of some of those penalty cards. So there's plenty of options, and there's quite a bit of strategy in this perceptively simple game. I really enjoyed that. I played it several times. I played it online as well. And you really have to think about what's going to happen next. So there's a couple of people who are going to take turns, and then it's your turn again, so stuff might happen. But you might think, well, by the time it's my turn, some of these rear tracks might be gone, and I might be able to get that card and combine it with my penalty stack and get rid of some cards, so I may want to pass. Or maybe you have a couple of double numbers on your hand, 2 1s or 2 2s, and you want to get rid of those, especially at the end of the game when the drawing stack is almost empty. You want to get rid of all your cards because any cards you have left are penalty points. So I really enjoy the gameplay. It's simple, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great filler. It only plays in about 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on the number of players. And yeah, I just thought it was great fun. So the replayability is also quite high, because after one game, you probably want to play again and get a rematch, because it's just that fast and it's just so much fun to put down those tracks. And finally, the game is also 100% language independent, which is absolutely great. You just get a rule book, and there's a Dutch and an English rule book in this version of the game. There are other languages that you can download online as well, and that's really all you need. The rules are dead simple, and the cards are free of language. You only have the tracks on them, the numbers, and of course also the number that you cannot play next, which is very handy, which is printed at the bottom of the card as well. So that is very convenient. And in the end, I really enjoyed it. I'm absolutely giving this game a big thumbs up. Really fun. Check out the Kickstarter, get a copy of your own. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll also get notified whenever I upload a new video. Please also consider becoming a Patreon saint to my channel if you want to support what I do. You'll get your name in the credits, and it's also very much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.